What's up, YouTube? How are you guys doing? My name is Aziz and I am an AI automation engineer and instructor, and I would like to welcome you to the third session of our workflow automation process building, where we are taking care of, building a complete infrastructure, how we can automate the creation process of a high quality lead list, right? And if you remember, we took a look into the sourcing automation already. Now, last time we took a look into the qualifying aspect. If you remember our table right here, right? So we used the yellow fields that we populated using Apollo and Apify, and then we were using another automation which took care of an ICP matching part, so that we can be sure that the leads that we got out of these lists 100% match what we are looking for. And now today, we want to populate the next column, which is the email status. I call it email status. You can call it something like verification of the emails or something like this, because what we want to make sure is that the email addresses that we got out of Apollo can actually be reached, right, from us, so that we can actually send data and send emails there, because we need to make sure that they don't bounce, right, because this will definitely harm our reputation and also harm the accounts that we are sending the emails from. Now, you might think, why would you want to do this? Because Apollo and other platforms already offer this verification status within their own platform, right? So if you have something like the email status right here, then you can just click on verified and it will filter out all the email addresses that are, unverified or that are actually risky. And the reason being is that, in my personal experience, is that it is not really reliable using this filter. So sometimes it filters out a couple of, or many actually, leads and email addresses which do work, right? It's because, but they were somehow flagged as unreliable or not reachable or unverified, whatever, and they could have been sent emails to, but it didn't work for some reason. So they were filtered out by Apollo. So I'm using a third-party service basically to do this myself. And the service that I'm using for this is called Bouncer. If you're not familiar with Bouncer, there are many, obviously, services like these, but I believe their pricing is quite decent. And the most important part, obviously, for what we are building within n8n is that we have an API, right? So we have API docs right here, and we are going to take a look at this in a second. And this is the reason why I am pretty satisfied with the results that I got out of Bouncer. Now, the process that I want to show you, or the flow rather, does look like this, and it consists of two flows this time. If you remember, we had the sourcing part, which is number one, then we have the qualifying part, and now we have, in regards to the verification, a trigger verification, and then we have a get verified emails flow, right? And this is the first part, so where we are at the end of the process, at the end of the workflow, triggering the Bouncer API, and this is how it works. So the first thing is that we want to obviously get all the data from our Google Sheet again. It is connected to my account with the resource is a sheet, and the operation is to get rows. After this, we are choosing the document, and then we're choosing the sheet. Everything else can be left as is, and this is what I want to do right now. So if I get this, then I will just get all these 410 rows right out of the document that you see right here, right? And now what I'm doing is to define a variable, which is basically to extract the emails from that list. As you can see, I am just creating a variable, and by the way, this is the so-called edit fields node. So if you look for edit fields, then this is the node that I'm using. So if you open this up, then you can see that you can click here, and then you can basically define a variable and then give it a value, which can be a fixed or an expression, right? So I've done that, and the only thing that I'm using is the email field. I've named it the email, and then I'm basically pulling the email value out of the Google Sheet, and then this is what it gives me, right? So this will be populated with the according value. The next node is a limit value, and this is again just for testing purposes. I did this last time. Is because we want to be sure that we don't work with the whole batch of the records, right, with all 410 items, but just, some like 5 or 10 or whatever. I'm keeping the first 5 items again. And then we have a code node. And if you look for code, I believe in the past it was called function node. And this allows you to run custom JavaScript code. And also Python is currently in beta. And as you can see, this is an extremely simple code snippet. You could even use this one right in the expression field of the email, right? But reason being that we have to do it like this is, if we take a look into the documents of Bouncer and what the input must look like, is that you can see and that I'm going to get to the whole APR part in a second, then you can see that we are sending over some data, and it has to have a very specific format, right? So this is the payload. This is basically the data that you're sending, and it starts within a square bracket and it ends with a square bracket. So this means it's an array, but it's not just an array of email addresses as you would expect, but it is an array of objects, and within those objects we have these key value pairs where we have the email key, and then we have the actual email address as the value, right? So it's a little, I wouldn't say complex, but it's not as easy as you might think. So it has to have this specific structure, and that's the reason why we're using the code node to basically convert the email address that we get here right into the format that we need at the end of the day, because the next node is what actually triggers the API of Bouncer, right, which will throw in all the emails into Bouncer, and then Bouncer will do its job and verify all of them and give them a status, and we will take a look into the results in a second. And this is also fairly simple, and we're using a post method. This is the URL that we are using, and when I jump back into the docs, then you can see that we are creating a batch request, right? This is the one, this is the endpoint that we are using, and this is the data that we need. So this is the URL, this is the method that we need. Then we have two headers that we need. Obviously, we do need an API key, which you will get inside of your API dashboard, or in your Bouncer dashboard rather. And then we have the actual payload. We have the data that we want to send it to. And if we jump back into n8n, then you can see we have the authentication part. I've already saved my Bouncer data within n8n, and then I do use the query parameters, and I am using a field called callback, and I'm going to get to this in a second. And then down here you can see that I'm sending over a body, and the body will be the JSON email, so will be what we get out of this node, right? What I have seen people do very often is that if you are using a service like Bouncer, where you basically need to wait for a result, that they are adding a wait node here, right, at the very end. So you're adding a wait node, and then you just give it a fixed time, right? So 5 seconds, 60 seconds, 10 minutes, whatever, and then the whole flow will be paused basically. So it will wait for the amount of time that you entered in this node, and then after this it will continue. Reason being that if I take a look into my dashboard, and here you can see some past queries that I have used using the API, then you can see when it started and when it ended. And you can see, for instance, when I throw in 1,230 leads, it does take about 5 minutes for Bouncer to finish its job, right, and to give me the results. So I have to wait until it's done with its job. Problem is, when I do this, that is a static value, right? So I really don't know how long it actually takes. So this is not an elegant solution. It would really be more beautiful if you would be notified, right, if the job is finished. And if that's the case, if you are notified by Bouncer, then you can continue with getting the actual data, right? And this is exactly what this flow is doing. So I'm going to delete this again, and I'm going back into the last node again, which is the API call to Bouncer. And here you can see that I'm using a query parameter called callback, and the value of this callback parameter is this URL, right? And you might think, all right, where does this come from? And you can also already see the word webhook, right? And when I jump into the next flow, and if you remember, we have two flows, right? We are triggering the verification first, and then we are getting the emails. We're actually getting the emails, the results, and this is the getting results flow. Then you can see that the trigger for this flow is a webhook, right? And when I open up this, then you can see that there's a URL, and this is exactly the URL that I entered in this node at the very end, and this will be the goal or the target URL that Bouncer will send the notification back as soon as the job is finished, right? And we're going to see how this works, and this gives the whole flow a really dynamic meaning, or a really or makes the whole flow extremely dynamic, because it doesn't matter if the whole job takes 10 seconds or a day, right? You always will be notified as soon as the job is done. And if that's the case, so after it's finished, then we are just getting the data, right? So we are calling another endpoint, and this is the get results endpoint, and you can see this here. And the only value we need is the batch ID, and the batch ID obviously will be sent via the webhook from Bouncer, right? So this is the result that we are getting. So we already have the data, we have the credentials, and that's already it. So there's nothing left for us to do. We are getting the data, and as soon as that is done, we are updating the leads with the according status that Bouncer gave us, right? That Bouncer created in its results. All right, so if you, first of all, are a little confused and you don't know really what the details are of the whole process, and you want to learn more about webhooks, about API calls, authentication, how everything works, and then I am, first of all, would be very grateful if you subscribe to this channel, because I will be releasing these kinds of videos every time. And second of all, I am creating Skriptt AI School, and this is a school where you will get into a very advanced stage of n8n, of automations, of process automations. And if you are working in the fields of some kind of operational environment, if you're working operations somehow for a company or by yourself, and you want to automate and streamline your processes and win back a lot of your time, then I can highly advise you to join this community. We will learn. You can start from scratch if you don't know what n8n is and you have barely gotten the gist of what I was talking about right now, but you're interested. Then I am first of all very happy to share all the assets that you're seeing here, and obviously everything else. And then I will get into the n8n basics. We will start from scratch. You will learn everything. We will build AI agents, right? That's a trending topic currently, which will ease up your life. You can run whole businesses just using AI agents. We will get into retrieval augmented generation in it, and we will get into scraping, how you can scrape data from almost any platform. We will get into Airtable and databases, right? Database design, vector databases, then prompting, how prompt engineering works, and everything else, n8n expressions, which are the ones that we just took a look into. And if you want to join, then please join today, because at the time of this recording, this community is free. So you will get access to all of this for free forever if you join today at the time of this recording, because this will be a paid community sooner or later. All right, so don't miss out on this. Now let's see how this whole flow works. So I'm going back into the first flow, and I already run the very first node. I'm going to run the whole flow right now, and let's just see what happens. So this was pretty fast, and we have limited the amount of items, right? So when I go back into the extract email addresses node, then you can see this is what we are getting out of, right? The whole database or the whole sheet. And then the next step is that we are limiting this to the first 5 items, and then we are basically just reformatting this into this whole format that I've just talked about. And the last step is that we are sending over the data, and now you can see what this looks like. So we have an array, and there you have this very specific format that we need to trigger the Bouncer API. Now, when I go back into Bouncer and I refresh the page, then you can see that this was just created. So it's 10 p.m. right now, and these were the 5 ones that I just created, and it's already completed, right? So it didn't even take a minute because it were only 5 leads, right? So that's not a lot of data. But if we jump back into the second flow and we go into the executions panel, then you can also see that basically a minute later, not even, we did receive the data, right? We have all the green check marks. So when I open this up, then you can see that this is the data, and I'm going to switch back into the schema view. Then you can see that this is the data that we got at the or by the notification from Bouncer, right? And here you can also see the value that we need, which is the batch ID, because the next flow, or the next node rather, if we open up this, then I have this variable right here, which is the batch ID. So I'm pulling the batch ID right into here, right, dragging and dropping basically just, and this is then the result, right, of the email address and what I got. And here we have that field which is called status. And when I go back into the last node, then you can see that I am using the status field, and I've just pulled and drag and dropped this status field right into the email status, and this is the one that we got in here. And here you can already see that this was just populated with these values, and these are risky, undeliverable, 2 deliverables, and risky, right? And this is how you can make sure that the emails you are sending to will work. And obviously it's now your choice if you want to include the risky ones. I would never advise you to use the undeliverable ones. Obviously, I do sometimes use the risky ones still, but if you want to be really sure, you would just use the deliverables, and that's already it. All right, so this is already it for this video. As you can see, this is a very elegant solution, and we don't have to do anything manually anymore. So the only thing that you would need is to have a prepared list like this, and we've already talked about this. And the next part will be to enrich the data, right? So we already have a lot of data, but we want to get a little more information so that at the end of the day, we can create a highly personalized icebreaker and personalized message. And this will be the next video. I hope to see you there. Thanks a lot for your attention, and bye.